Good morning, afternoon, or evening. This is Adam with the Theory, and welcome to another episode of Adam's Theory. Sorry, I've been gone for a little bit. That hurricane really messed me up. But Antonio, Josh, and myself, we're doing okay right now. So we're back in action. I just got the cats are just taking a break right now, but I promise you they'll come back on the next video. So the topic of today is everyone's favorite spell, Counterspell. I was playing Magic with my friends, and we was playing Commander actually, and it was a 4-man, and I went and things were getting a little bit crazy on the table, so I needed to board wipe. So I cast a level 7 spell to kind of wipe the board. And I forgot there was a blue player to my left with 2 open mana. And I got counterspelled. And there was nothing I could do. I'm just there, just looking around and like, wow. I was salty. I was very, very salty. That my not even level, my 7 mana magic card was negated with 2 mana, 2 blue. So first off, to all my blue players out there, I hate y'all. I really, really do still hate y'all, okay? They should burn all your magic cards, all right? But let's continue, all right? So because of that, I kind of started thinking about Counterspell. And there's been a lot of people talking about the new changes in the 2024 Player's Handbook, and one of the changes is with Counterspell, and a lot of people don't like it. I read the spell, and I was like, wow, they really, really nerfed this spell. Like, why would they do that? But then I started to reminisce about my experience playing against the spell, Counterspell, and also with Counterspell. And to be quite honest, I hate the spell. I hate the spell as a player. I hate Counterspell. Now let me explain. When nobody has Counterspells, I feel the flow of the game is smooth. Okay? Mostly. Hey, if you cast a spell, I cast a spell, I swing an axe, you shoot an arrow, we're going with it. Boom. Everything's cool. But as soon as Counterspell gets introduced to the game, as soon as you hit level 5 and your wizard and your sorcerer or your warlock gets Counterspell, here's a note. As a warlock player, please don't ask me to get Counterspell. I have 2 spell slots. All right? If I have to use Counterspell, I'm going to be upset. All right? That's 50% of my spell cap. Please don't. But let's continue. As soon as the spell gets introduced to the game, now there's a whole different level of combat. It's like, all right, you're fighting, and for example, like you're fighting, fighting a lich, or you're fighting an evil wizard. The DM's like, the wizard casts a spell. And you're like, okay, all right, okay, what spell he cast? You don't know. So that's when, now the DM says that, you have to, you got to see if you recognize the spell. Is it in your school of magic, or is it in your class, would your class know the spell? Or you got to make an arcane check of like 15 or something. And you're like, goodness. And then he's like, all right, I countered the spell. Then he's like, you countered their cantrip. Then you feel some type of way about the DMs. Like, does this DM really do a cantrip? Did he really bait me? And I just feel like it creates this little player versus DM dynamic that I don't really like. And then it's like, okay, you get past that encounter, you get another encounter, then all of a sudden you fighting 2 or 3 freaking monsters with Counterspell. You're like, whoa, like everybody got Counterspell. What's going on? And you're like, I'm freaking useless here. So it's like, oh, I cast a spell. Well, they counter your spell. Well, I counter their counter. It's like, well, another person that just came out the corner is gonna counter your spell, and you're just like, it just honestly just becomes a headache. It really, really does. I remember I had a DM that homebrewed a monster for us to fight, and this monster was it was a boss monster that had pretty much they could use level 1, 2, and or 3 level spells infinitely. They got infinite level 3 and lower spell slots, and they just used a lot of those infinite spell slots for counterspell. And we had a wizard in the party, and all his spells were getting countered. So after the match, we did win, but we was like, the person that was playing the wizard was like, "Hey, listen, I mean, I felt useless because I couldn't do anything because every time I did something, my spell was countered." And I'm like, yeah, I would feel some type of way too about that. Like a wizard that can't use spells is useless. And I'm like, what is he doing? Just holding a book? He might just taking notes and stuff, just writing about the adventure. So there's that issue with the counterspell, and I can understand it. Like with the 2014 version of counterspell is pretty much a free, like, hey, I just stop you. Okay, you cast fireball? No. Cast lightning bolt? No. Mirror image? Nope. Yes, they did put that in there where it's like, okay, well, if you try to counter a spell at a higher level, you got to make I guess a check with your, whatever you use for your spell modifiers, if whether that's charisma or intelligence. But let's face it, most of the time you're going to get that. Your charisma modifier is going to be like, plus 4 or 5. So chances are you're going to get it because you got to beat the DC. It's 10 plus the spell level. So most of the time you're going to get it. All right. So it is a very powerful spell. And I can understand the DM's point, side of the table where it's like, okay, well, if I show you I'm casting a level 5 spell, you're just going to try to counter it with a level 5 spell slot. So so I got to try to put some excitement into it. And yes, if you counter a spell, you pretty much took that caster's turn away. The turn is gone. Okay? Like, all right, the wizard tries to cast fireball. You counter the spell. Okay, well, the wizard can't do anything. Pass. Okay? It's rough. So I understand the DM's point, part of it where it's like, okay, well, I got to balance an encounter. If I put a spellcaster there and the wizard, and there's a wizard or sorcerer in the party, and they're just going to counter everything. So what can I do? So it does make it slows down the game, and it can make a possible toxic situation between the player and the DM. All right. So then in the 2024, they introduced a new version of Counterspell. So I do want to read it to you. Okay. With the new version of Counterspell, you attempt to interrupt a creature in the process of casting a spell. The creature makes a Constitution saving throw. On a failed save, the spell dissipates with no effect, and the bonus action, or reaction used to cast it is wasted. If that spell was cast with a spell slot, it isn't expended. So there's a lot there. Okay. First off, the creature got to make a con save. All right. Now, that could be rough because since it's making a con save, if whoever you're fighting got legendary resistance, they could just use that to pass. Some monsters have very high modifiers to their con save bonus, so chances are they could still make it. And then even if you get it off, they don't have don't lose that spell slot. So you pretty much delay them a turn. So some people have some issues with it. And yes, I do see that it is a nerf. However, there's a couple of good things that come out of this. First off, the nerf is for the DM, also the player. Because if the DM wants to go and have a monster with Counterspell, well, that also means that they have to obey by the new rules too. So that means you get to make a con save as well. Okay? And if you are a caster, I really do feel that your con should be your second highest stat, because if you are a wizard or sorcerer or any type of caster and you're doing a spell that requires concentration, more than likely you are going to go and you're going to be making some con saves. So having that does help a lot. Now, here is, before anybody asks, okay, Warcaster will not work with this. All right? Yes. All right. I know that you're, watching the screen and like, oh, I get Warcaster. No. Okay? Warcaster is there to give you advantage on, the concentration checks. This isn't a concentration check. This is a con save. And you're not getting advantage on it, my brother. So you're going to have to, make something happen with that. All right? So, I'm not the biggest fan of the new Counterspell. However, I do feel it is a step in the right direction. I'm not a big fan of this spell being just a automatic success thing. I'm not a big fan of that. All right. Just think about it. Like, you're a lich and you're about to cast a level 9 spell, then some, wizard out of school and everything. Granted, if he's a level 5 and stuff, I mean, if he's fighting a lich, and then he's done anyway. All right, you know what? That was a bad example. I'll cut that off. But the point that I'm trying to make is this, all right? The old Counterspell was kind of boring, all right? And it just led to a lot of Counterspell trains, especially at high levels. Okay, all right. You got you do a spell, and then all of a sudden you got 3 or 4 players trying to counter counter that first spell. All right. By the time you forgot what you countered. All right. So I think it's a step in the right direction, but maybe we could fine tune it. When I was having this discussion with some friends of mine, they actually suggested that you have a roll off. You roll a d20, and whoever gets if you cast the counter spell, you get higher, the spell's countered. If you're the caster and you roll higher, spell goes through. All right. And whether you want to add certain modifiers to it, you can. But I kind of feel like that would add a little more excitement to the whole counterspell thing. And then I also love rolling dice anyway. So I would like that instead of it just being, I counter it. Okay, moving on. So that's pretty much what I've been thinking about while I've been away from you guys. But the most important thing is I want to hear what you guys think. How do you guys feel about the new 2024 Counterspell? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Are you so about it? Are you going to ignore the new 2024 Counterspell and just use the old one? Or are you going to homebrew your own rules to it? I would love to hear your thoughts on it, all right? Because I've been missing in action for a little bit, I'm going to promise to give you guys another video probably Monday or Tuesday, maybe even sooner than that. Well, thank you very much for listening to me. I'm going to go and I'm going to try to go to sleep, and hopefully my cats don't counter that. All right? Later, guys.